Greetings, citizens. It's Friday, it's 9 a.m. It must be time for another episode of Reverse the Verse Live. I'm your host, content manager Jared Huckabee. Let's get to this week's news, shall we? Last week on the show, we had special guests, Director of Star Citizen Live, Todd Pappy, and Development Director from Foundry 42 DE, Brian Chambers here, live via Skype to answer your questions about Star Citizen's continuing development. And it's always a thrill to have either one of them on the show. There was a wealth of good information following the studio update from ATV, so be sure you check it out if you have the time. I'm still sick, sorry. We also published the January 2018 monthly report, which is a great look at what some of our other studios have been up to in their time out of the ATV spotlight, including their continuing work on ships like the F-8 Lightning and the new armor sets like the Legacy Outlaw Light. That's available now on the robertspaceindustries.com website. Monday saw the release of another episode of our new question and answer series, Calling All Devs, where we took the questions that you people submitted and voted on and posed them directly to our developers. This week's topics included the recent golf ball bug, decorating the interior of our spaceships, importing and exporting data from Mobiglass using API, the current considerations regarding the Redeemer, and the future of Tessa Bannister. Now, Calling All Devs is available each and every week, and don't forget that you can submit your questions for consideration right now up on Spectrum. Tuesday brought us the first installment for 2018 of our venerable Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy series, where Will Weisbaum, your third favorite lore maker, took us on a tour of the Kellogg system, and did so without making a single cereal joke. Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy, the first Tuesday of every month. They're great! Subscribers also got their flyable ship for the month of February, and it's the Constellation Aquila. But it also has a new added bonus, the Ursa Rover. If you're a subscriber, you can log in now and play with either vehicle all month long as a perk of the subscriber program. Now, we're going to see some of the Ursa races that have started popping up across moons a little bit later on in the show. Subscribers also got access to a vault of work-in-progress images for the Aegis Hammerhead and the Anvil Terrapin. If you're a subscriber and you haven't checked out the subscriber vault, there's a wealth of behind-the-scenes and work-in-progress images available to you each and every week up on the RSI website. So, do that. Finally, yesterday saw the release of our newest episode of Around the Verse, featuring our brand new cross-studio overall project update segment and a feature dedicated to the continuing work on combat balancing. Now, joining us on the show this week are designers from Foundry 42 UK, John Crewe and Annie Nicholson, who will be here to answer your questions live in just a few minutes. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this look at some of the amazing game capture done recently by Star Citizen Mr. Hoskaha. We'll be back in a bit, guys. And that was another great video from Mr. Hoska. You can always count on Mr. Hoska. Fun fact, he actually helped submit footage for our recent Alpha 3.0 trailer that was released on the website. So good job. All right, now to the meat and potatoes of the show. Joining us on the show this week, all the way from sunny, cheery England, Annie Nicholson and John Crewe. How you guys doing?
Hi, hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
Doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Now, we've had you on the show. I think we had you, the last time we had both of you on the show was a subscriber town hall last year.
Yes.
It's been almost a year since we've had you on the show. Anything changed since then?
I guess we got older. Yeah.
I got really confused when I saw the preview image for this on Twitter, and there was a picture of both of us doing it. I thought, how have they taken a picture of us doing this the day before we did it? And I remembered we did that last year.
I was relieved. I thought we'd done it already. I was like, oh, thank God.
No, this is one of our few repeats. So I'm like, I can just use a picture from last time. So every episode of Reverse the Verse or ATV or Happy Hour or Town Hall, whatever, every episode is somebody's first episode. So why don't we take a few minutes, tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
I'll go first. My name's John Crewe. I'm the lead technical designer here at Foundry 42. So the UK tech design team deals with setting up all the UK ships. We also deal with balance. Obviously, that's why we're sat here. And we deal with a lot of concepts for FPS and vehicle weapon development, getting them from briefs all the way to in-game.
Yeah, that kind of covers it from my side. I'm on John's team, but that I also do balance stuff, I suppose, more fundamentally when that comes to weapons, as we discussed on the ATV this week.
Yes, we did. Yeah. So let's talk about that, the ATV. Now, obviously, we refer to the segment as weapon balance, but it was a bit more than that. Combat balance. It was really a segment related to all things combat balance, which includes weapon tuning, armor tuning, ship health tuning, shield tuning. Right? I'm not out of my mind here, right?
No, it covers quite a lot.
Yeah, I think I talked about it in it, that it's just one part of the overall balance picture, and they all interact with each other, so you have to be on top of it all to get a good experience.
Okay.
Somehow we managed to have a wide view of the big picture.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with weapon power. What are some of the parameters we use when determining a weapon's power? Do we look at impact damage, rate of fire, armor penetration, damage type? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I guess all of those things. And, when we think of a weapon being overpowered, I tend to think, okay, that's the DPS, that's the time to kill of all the ships. So, the smaller ships usually, if I see a weapon is overpowered, that's how I test it anyway.
Yeah, you
give it a little go on those small ships.
Step one is, what should this weapon be doing? Like, if it's a cannon and it's overpowered, it's probably either doing too much damage or it's firing too fast.
Yes.
So an overpowered cannon is something different to an overpowered repeater. They'll probably have very different behaviors that are causing that overpowered result.
Yeah. Usually the easiest thing is checking the damage, checking the rate of fire, and then the spread, I suppose. It's the accuracy, the range. So how easy is it to hit with this weapon, and how much does it do damage-wise over like a short period of time?
Yeah. I mean, you can get other areas that aren't the natural statistics that cause the feeling of a weapon being overpowered. Some like things you don't tend to think of, like the VFX or the audio. So some VFX might not be playing as you intended. Like they might be less intrusive, which gives the feeling that it's more powerful than it is. And the same for the audio. Like quite often people perceive weapon strength to the sound it's making. It sounds silly, but it is something. Like if you have a big sniper rifle in the game and it just goes, then people tend to think, well, that's a rubbish sniper rifle. It could be doing all the damage in the world, but that audio really sells it. And if that's not on point as well, that can sometimes factor into it.
I'm actually happy you brought that up. I've just been playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, and they've got two classes that do the exact same thing. Like there's a smuggler and a sniper class, and they're all the exact same abilities, exact. And I was playing smuggler and playing the sniper, and the sniper just feels like it does more damage. I know it does the exact same damage, but it's because the sound effect on the weapon is just so much more resonant in my headphones. I feel like when I shoot with the sniper, I'm like, yes, I'm hitting that guy hard. And it's like, you're doing the same damage you were doing on your other thing. It's just the sound effect, Jared. But it's important.
It all ties it all together. And it's like quite a lot of games actually, if you dig into the details or you have access behind the scenes, some of the weapons are clones of each other. And it's just the visuals and the audio that change. And you'll have people arguing that weapon X is better than weapon Y, and it's not. It's the same. It's just the whole package is sort of makes it feel that way.
Interesting. All right, now, so folks who are watching the show live, you can submit your questions for consideration to be asked to John and Andy. You can submit them into Twitch chat. You can please preface your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. That's just what's going to help me, pull them out from all the other chat that's going on. We also had a thread up on Spectrum throughout the week where we were collecting questions and folks were voting on them and whatnot. We had it up before the episode went live so we could collect just some general combat questions that people have had over the last, however many months since we've had you on. And then, of course, questions directly following up on the show. Now, going over, continuing on the overpowered thing, one of the things that I would imagine you have to consider when figuring out if something's overpowered and balanced is time to kill. How do you decide what the time to kill of a ship is? I mean, like with a Connie, obviously you have to take a Connie and a Saber should kill it in this many seconds. An Aurora should kill it in this many seconds. Do you do all of the weapon calculations and then get to a time to kill, or do you start with a time to kill and then start adjusting things to match that? How does that process work?
Where do we start?
Start small.
The time to kill of I know obviously we said this, prefaced it a lot, that things aren't finished and it's still ongoing balance. So we tend to try and get things right on the small level, the small scale, with damage, rate of fire, and all those things, and then with the shield items, the armor items, and the ship health. I wouldn't say that we have an exact time to kill in mind. And apologies, I think someone's on a motorbike outside. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yeah, you're fine.
So you start at the small level, and
you do one ship against another ship. You get that rough ballpark time that we're interested in, and then we go, oh, what's the next level up? Does it sort of scale with that? And then they all sort of build onto each other. Then the wild card is obviously people can change their loadouts. So when we do our time to kill goals or estimates, we do it off the base loadout. So because you can't really factor in every single combination of weapon and missile and shield and armor combinations that they can do against those. So we go on the defaults, and the default loadouts for every ship sort of contain most of our weapons. So when you're balancing one ship against another, you're already factoring in those weapons. So hopefully it doesn't get skewed massively if someone changes all the weapons from one to another, because it's factored in somewhere. But as we build up the ships, it does get longer.
Yeah. We tend to play test these things a lot with smaller ships, actually, to get the feel right for those. I think I'd be honest to say that we haven't spent as much time with the larger ships, and that is still work in progress.
Yeah,
there's a lot more to do there.
There's a lot of systems still to come that will make those ships more enjoyable to behave. So more enjoyable. That's not even English.
Well, that brings me to a good point. The balancing work that we're doing right now, this is for the game in the state that it's in now. right? I mean,
Yes.
You referenced in the segment, you referenced that the work that you were doing was going into a small patch that would be released. We actually filmed this segment, your segment, before 3.01 went out. So the patch that you were talking about is the 3.01 patch that just went out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Hopefully people noticed a quite significant change in how the ship combat was between 3.0 and 3.01.
It's quite interesting. You have to talk about that patch as a little hot fix, which it kind of was. It was taking the state of the game in 3.0 and the things that we weren't happy with, and quickly isolating things that we could do and fix quickly. So it was a very quick turnaround on, I suppose, everyone being back in the office and assessing the state of 3.0 and then what we can do just to get balance feeling much more enjoyable. A quick fix was, say, like, we brought down the health on shields and the regen on the shields, and that's going to be something that's going to change a lot even from now, because we won't have it right for a long time, I think. But that patch was a quick turnaround thing.
We had to quickly isolate what we could fix, very short term, and then what we wanted to fix for 3.1, and then what we wanted to do beyond that.
That kind of highlights that balance. It's never done, but we can quickly assess and make changes. Yeah. Just based on the current state of the game.
I'm trying to talk, but I'm also trying not to cough in your ears constantly. So I apologize.
Don't leave us hanging.
I'm sorry.
Don't leave us hanging.
So like you said, most of the work that we were talking about in this segment, like the work on the ship health and the armor and stuff like that. We're talking about the intermediate, the how the game is now, how the game is in the immediate future. But what are our long-term plans? A lot of folks, I saw threads on Spectrum, I saw threads on Reddit about people like, why does a ship have health and armor and multiplies it? And I thought the different components were going to have health. And he goes, let's talk a little bit about the difference between the game now and balancing for the game now versus what our long-term plans are for this kind of thing.
Sure. I'll try and briefly go over it all. Like you said, we balance for the game as it is now. How we do stuff is how we can do it. The long-term goal is still going to be the whole component-driven behavior. So you'll be, rather than ships having like an artificial health pool, armor is like a flat reduction. It will be physically based damage. So the parts of the ship will have strength based on their materials. Projectiles will have mass and velocity, and then that will be how the damage is calculated. Penetration will fall out of that. Energy weapons, obviously, lasers don't have any mass or very, very little mass, but they have velocity, so they'll be great at some things. Ballistics have mass, less velocity, and that's shields. The law of the shields is that they slow down mass, so that's why energy weapons is great against them, and they sort of eat it all up and deplete the shields. Ballistics go through them because the mass, it slows the mass down. It doesn't stop the mass, it slows it down, and they've got enough mass to go through and then hit the hull underneath, whereas lasers and energy weapons don't have that. So we're still going towards that long-term goal of doing it that way, very simulation driven. We've been talking about it for a long time. We started looking into it when we were first talking about it, and we sort of realized that there was a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we had to get in place first, mostly to do with getting everything with item 2.0. So for 3.0, most of the ship components got done for item 2.0. At the moment, we're finishing converting the weapons, which is naturally a very big part of this whole new damage behavior that we'll be going towards. Everything has to be item 2.0 to work nicely with each other. You could sort of do it before, but it wouldn't have been efficient and would have resulted in a lot of wasted time. So all the pieces of the puzzle had to be item 2.0: ships, weapons, ammo, and sort of all of that. And then you've got to actually come up with the rule sets for it all, which we're working on at the moment. So whilst, yes, the ships have a health pool now, and the armor does X and shields do Y, that is simulating to the best of our abilities future behavior with what we have. It's not one-to-one. Yeah. It's not going to stay like this forever. It's going towards that system.
It's one of the unique challenges of having to run a live environment in the middle of game development. It's because we are running a live environment in the middle of our game development. It means one of the difficult things when talking about stuff, whether it's you guys talking about weapon balance yesterday at ATV, or developers talking about piracy gameplay systems, and there's always this disconnect between talking about what is going on right now and what we're capable of doing now with the amount of game systems that are online and in place and implemented and working versus our long-term design goals. We've said for a long time that we want a systemic damage system. That's basically you've got all. It's basically you set all the materials, you set all the features of all the materials, all the components of the ships, and basically it works itself out. It's all energy based. Whether the energy is coming from a laser bolt or it's the kinetic energy involved in a ballistic. So we all want to move to this systemic damage system, and it'll happen just like everything else. But where we are right now is what we were really talking about in the segment yesterday. So
yeah, one of the really cool, interesting things that's going to come out of it is at the moment we talk about time to kill because it's what we have in the game at the moment. It's a very sort of linear concept of ships have health, you get the health to 0, ship goes bang. You don't have that nice way of disabling ships. Mm-hmm. Whereas when we move to that system, it's less about destroying the ship, more about disabling the components, which in turn disables the ship. Mm-hmm. And ships are only going to explode when you do critical damage to power plants or huge ammo boxes. And even then, they might not kill the ship. It will cause an explosion, and depending on the tensile strength or the fracture index or the strength of the part and the location of it, that bit might snap off. We've got the ability now to have multiple physics grids in ships. We saw that in Gamescom with the Idris, where it snapped apart and you couldn't quite see it in the live stream, but we had fun with it in testing in that it snaps apart and it didn't kill the people inside. You could still wander around. You could board the hulk of the Idris hangar that was floating around with all the power was out because the power plants were in the bit that had snapped off. But it was a living bit of ship that was just floating through space. And that sort of gameplay is going to fall out of it naturally.
Yeah, there's multiple physics grids. That's one of the big things we're moving towards, and it's we're doing other segments and stuff like I can't spoil other segments, but yes, many people in all of our studios are very excited about the advent of multiple physics grids and ships and non-death states and stuff like that. All right, so remember everybody, we are taking questions live from the chat. We are with John Crewe and Andy Nicholson. They are designers involved in ship and weapon and combat balance and stuff. So I see questions like, when is the headless character bug going to get fixed? These aren't the guys who are going to have that information. So
why would we fix that?
Feature. If I can't have a head, I can't get headshot, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Balance.
So remember to try to tailor your questions towards the avenues that these folks work in, because I can't ask a question that they don't know. It's like hey John Crewe, what's the deal with the headless bug?
12.
See, he doesn't know. It's not an area he works on.
Good effort.
One of the questions from the chat that came through. Have we considered beam weapons? He's referring to like the old Star Trek phasers, the beam weapons. Is that a weapon type we've considered? Are you considered, or have we ruled that out?
So I'll tell a little story about beam weapons.
Do go on.
When I first started here, beam weapons weren't in the law. And And then a designer who will remain anonymous did a little prototype and showed it to Chris and the writers. I believe it was one of the Squadron guys, of this turret with beam weapons. And the moment they saw that, they were like, that looks awesome, we should do that. And whilst we don't have the code in place to do it, we do have them on the schedule to come. And they do provide like a very different gameplay. Sort of, for each of the weapon types, ballistic and energy and other types, we sort of try and have symbiotic ones. So the ballistic Gatlings are the very fast firing ballistic weapons, whereas energy beam ones are their equivalent. So it's a continuous stream of matter. So yeah, they are on the list.
It's strange, isn't it? Because you kind of almost, the door's open for like an energy Gatling as well.
Yeah, there's
But a
nothing to stop
ballistic
it.
beam?
It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. See,
You're getting
design
Reddit,
is hard.
You're getting Reddit hot and bothered. I can already see it.
Yeah.
So what was the? We went off on a tangent there. So what's the answer about beam weapons in Star Citizen? Just one line it.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yes, at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's another question from the chat.
Beautiful story, by the way.
Thank you.
We mentioned on ATV the difference between civilian ships and components, civilian ships, raising ships, military ships. I think cargo was listed as a type. I'm not entirely certain that was correct when it was mentioned.
Should have been transporter.
Yeah, you transport. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the different types of stuff there, because we've done the shipyard posts by the way, which thank you to John Crewe for helping to put that together. And if you haven't read the shipyard posts, those are available on robertspaceindustrials.com website. I highly recommend you read those, because we almost killed ourselves trying to put those together.
Yeah.
But summarize, for us, for folks who haven't read or won't read, what are our different ship types? What's the difference between civilian and military and all that stuff, and what separates those?
So you must know them off the top of your head by heart now, right?
As Jared said, if you go read the shipyard posts, then you'll see it.
Well,
But
you've not got them written down.
I've not got it written down. It's a sort of convenient way of comparing. It applies to ships and it also applies to items. So we have the ship classifications: military, civilian, transport, or industrial, and whatever, and then grades A to D. So civilian C is an item that performs at 100% of its capacity. So that's, ships come with typically civilian grade C items by default. That's their bog standard behavior. And then every other sort of combination on that matrix increases various stats various ways. So for example, shields. A grey or a civilian shield, grade C, is a shield. A military one, still grade C, is much greater shield output, regen, but consumes more power and gives out more signal. Stealth, grade C shield, is one that has less output, probably a slower regen, but its signatures are reduced, so you can tailor sort of the behavior, and then you factor in the grades. They go up naturally and down, but each item has, I think, up to 8 statistics that's factored into that grade. So depending on the item, they all go up and down, and that sort of ties into their performance. Balancing falls out of it, and then it factors into the economy as well.
Yeah, value definitely. That sort of, it's the same when it comes to the career roles, right? They all have, say, the transporter has, is it industrial items that fit onto it to fulfill that role of the ship?
Yeah,
I mean, the items are supposed to help us create these identities.
Transporter ships are supposed to be out there long time, long haul. So the items they carry are ones that have high durability.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things we talked about in the episode was the different armor types. Specifically called out was the Hornet Ghost, and how the Hornet Ghost now has a stealth armor type, which makes getting a missile lock more difficult. Makes other players trying to get missile lock more difficult. How are we going to communicate that to the players? Like if you can't visually identify that the ship is wearing stealth armor, and you're sitting there and you're trying to get a missile lock, and the missile lock's just taking forever and not going, how do we communicate that to backers without them thinking, oh, it's a bug?
Probably better answered by the scanning guys, but
Fair enough.
The scanning will have multiple stages. So like very, very high level initial scan gives you the rough information. So when you're trying to lock onto it, it'll do a brief scan. It might say Hornet Ghost or another stealthy ship. It won't give you all the information of the ship. You have to keep scanning it. And naturally you're going to learn. If you don't own these ships or know nothing about it, you're going to hopefully learn by feeling that every time I encounter one of these ships, it takes longer to do this on. Whereas if I find another Hornet, then it's, oh, that was much quicker. So then something is up with the Ghost. If you own these ships yourself, then naturally it's all explained to you in the lore on your equipment terminals. It tells you all about this.
Okay.
I mean, there should be signature readouts of these ships once you scan and target them. The ship's infrared levels will be there.
You'll notice that it is, from your experience, less than other ships you encounter.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like the signature of the ship make you harder to hit or easier to hit. If you've got loads of the items that are overpowered, maybe overclocked, giving off higher signatures. Yeah, the difficulty of showing that to players. I suppose we used to have little readouts that would just say numbers.
That's coming back.
It's coming back, good, because that makes a big difference.
I saw it on the UI guys screen today.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah. It's coming back.
It's coming back.
I see a question in the live chat that actually matches one of the questions that was taken from the thread where folks were voting. Both questions talk about different shield types and whether we've considered either having different types of shields that protect better. Like, could there be a shield that is more tuned towards ballistic damage than energy damage, even though the standard shields aren't that way? Or are there ways to adjust shield modulation and stuff to help protect against certain damage types?
It's something I think that's really open to us at the moment. We have been discussing this this week, actually, of just because I think some of us are more expectant that we'll go down the road of shields and armor that can be switched in and out, that will have different resistances to different damage types, which I mean, we have different damage types in the weapons already. This is, we need to be making sure that the defensive side can be alternated in the same way that you can, the same way you can change your loadout for different weapons to do different damage types. You'd be able to do the same to counter on the defensive side.
It's no good just stacking all the goodies on the offensive side without providing at least a fair set of tools on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's the gameplay we want. Yeah, I think everyone would like to see it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been talking about that a lot.
Yeah, and you do at the moment on all the shields, you do have some ability to sort of tune it. So you can move the faces around, and that does have a significant effect. You can do shield hardening, which does, as the name implies, it does harden the shields and sort of really does reduce the amount of damage coming through. So if you get into a combat situation and you go, I'm seriously outgunned here, I need to get out of here, you can just start flying in the opposite direction, punt all your shields to your back face, harden it, and it will significantly increase the amount of time it takes for those shots to come through your shields, giving you the time to quantum out of there or do other things.
Cool. All right. Our next question was from the thread, heavily voted on. I'm going to reword it a little bit. It was a little aggressive in its wording. But let's go ahead and talk about the current state of IFCS and ESP. Where do you guys see IFCS and ESP now? And then let's talk a little bit about what our thoughts and plans for 3.1 and beyond for them are.
Current state
where it is, we know there are issues with it. And I actually have, because I saw that question, so got some notes from the engineers that are working on it handed to me. I'm a designer, not an engineer, so I apologise to who gave me these notes if I misinterpret it.
Do your engineer voice when you read it.
I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
ESP, people were complaining that it was broken or not reliable enough. There was a issue where the pips were, because it uses the pips to work out the ESP, and there was an issue where it was picking the wrong pip or no pips to do the EMP on. So you'd get wildly different behavior on what you were expecting, and inconsistent behavior. That's been fixed. That is with QA now in a QA test request that they're testing at the moment. I believe you had a look at it, and it seemed
just a quick look at the code shelf myself, and it seemed fixed to me. I tested it on a static ship. We had some issues with obviously with UI preventing QA from getting a full test on it, but the changes that John Pritchard had made seemed to have resolved this problem. I mean, we recognized in 3.0 that there was an issue. It's just we didn't have enough time to get it for it to come together for the 3.01 hot fix or interim patch, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, it took a lot of investigation because it wasn't a 100% reproducible issue. You had to sort of have a bit of luck to reproduce it and then catch it in Visual Studio. So you had to spend a lot of time investigating it. And they had a vague idea of what was going on fairly early on, but it took a lot of iteration to really nail it down.
It was tricky. I mean, you played the game and you felt something was awry, and the testers felt the same, and all the community feedback was telling us this. And you get loads of different feedback from, it's working differently when I'm using a joystick or a gamepad or mouse. And you start to go, okay, there's something weird.
And you get people going, it's fine for me.
It's fine for me, but like maybe they don't understand what ESP is, or because it's it's quite a complicated thing to even explain. For those that don't know, it's enhanced stick precision.
Yes.
Yeah. Which brings the closer your movements are to the target's movements, the more I think it helps adjust you to the target. I think that's the best, easiest way to put it.
It sort of desensitizes your movement to enable you to be more accurate.
Yeah. If you're good, it'll make you better. It's the kind of design philosophy behind it. It's not an auto aim in the strictest.
You still have to do input to do it. It's not like move off the cursor near it and there you go.
Yeah, and I was playing it this week to see how it was working again. There was a perhaps sense that it was a little bit too sticky or corrected a bit too much.
So that's one thing that came out of the QATR that we've got to work on now, is that it is design tunable, but the values we had given for it was with the previous iteration of it, and with these fixes it's changed it, so we now need to go back and then do some more iteration on it to make it not as glue-like.
I think with changes to rotational velocities on the ships in 3.0, that probably made it a lot probably made it out of sync with each other. The targeting isn't able to keep up with these ships and their turning rates. So we need to look at that for 3.1, but that fixes in QA testing it. Future of ESP, I mean, it's so important to have something there, I think. When you're targeting these tiny little ships, sometimes some kind of correction to get you on course. When it's not there, people notice it, I think, eventually.
Yeah, and it's like all of our assistance systems, it's toggleable, so if you don't want it,
of course,
take it off.
Those advanced players can easily switch off.
Yeah, and about IFCS, this is a really engineering one, so
Well,
If people wanted more of an in-depth explanation, I'm sure Jared or someone can find an engineer to talk
This
about
kind
it.
of explains why it took.
Hold on, I'll be
Before you
right
could
back.
fix before you could fix ESP,
Yeah, we had to fix IFCS. So
has he gone? We don't know.
I don't know.
No,
Can't
he's
see him.
coughing. He's still.
All right. Well, a valiant effort, all the same, John Crewe, to step outside your comfort zone.
So a big problem people were seeing was the control attitude sort of separating position and rotation wise. That was caused by changes between 2.6 and 3.0 that sort of went under the radar.
It did to us as designers.
Yeah,
Like, we would never have known about this.
It was part of the whole optimization for 3.0, moving lots of things to a batch update system so it would be more efficient. IFCS worked on a fixed time step, and with the batch update change, it now works on a variable time step. So things were sort of getting out of sync, and that's what people were seeing were the two reticles becoming out of sync. So the control methods that IFCS uses have been improved to account for the new optimizations more thoroughly, and lots of improvements and just iterations on that. And that again is with Q8 now being Q80
All right. One of the chat people are like, Jared looks bored. I'm like, no, Jared looks sick. Every time we switch to the other camera, I'm just like, ugh. I was like taking the opportunity to rest.
John, the story, John. Quick. He's getting bored.
Nope. Since you did so well the handling and engineering question that's outside of your realm, let me go ahead and ask you about turrets.
Turrets.
What do you have? What do you have in the turret area? What kind of information do you have in the turret area? And I know a lot of people talk about how we do zero order control on pitch, but not on yaw, stuff like that. What can you tell us about that? I know,
Yes.
knowing full well that that's a programming and engineering thing.
Yeah.
You're still a designer, but.
So before we came on air, because I knew you were going to ask that, I went and had a quick look at it, and they are actually both axes of first order, not zero order. It's just that the values on them are very different, and long term, we want to make it so you can have it on zero order on both or first order on both, and give people the preference, because as with everything, like people tend to go, I like this or I like that. You can never get the two camps agreeing on what they want from it. So at the end of the day, it's what feels right for you.
I mean, just to point out what the problem was that was highlighted with the question, I think, from the community, was that pitch and yaw on turrets was feeling very different.
Yeah, when you pitched, it was more instant than yawing. And yeah, it's come down to the values that are in there, and we're going to be looking at that and always changing and improving stuff.
Yeah,
but
one of those things, I think, where we weren't aware there was a problem.
No,
but we took a little look and we seemed to have a way to fix that.
Yeah, I had a quick look at it, and there's changes can be done that make it closer to zero order. It is actually first order, but the sort of the dead zone is very small on one axis compared to the other. And the other factor, if you think of our turrets, they're not gimbaled weapons. So pitch, the guns just have to go up and down, whereas the turret has to rotate to match it. Whereas perhaps if the turrets were a bit more, had gimbaled weapons on them, they could yaw to hit your point of aim quicker. But there's lots of things to think about and improve on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not the turret designers.
No, they come. Everyone, we know they're not as happy as they should be, and there has been work and there is work going on to make them better. Yes, because everyone always comes to us going, how are you going to make multi-crew ships with turrets competitive against single seaters? Why would I ever bring a multi-crew ship instead of 3 single seaters? And we're aware of that and working on it.
It's something that everybody in every studio is well aware of. It's just like with anything else. There's only so many resources to tackle so many features at any given time. The development clock cycles back around. Its time will come back up. And I know people like John and people like Mark here have already talked. They've all got ideas and thoughts about it. So it's on the list. Yep. Okay, let's see. We've taken you to IFCS and that you don't work on because it's engineering. We've taken you to turrets that you don't work on because it's programming engineering. What do you got for interdiction?
That's also something we don't work on.
No, and that's the hardest part about doing these things.
I heard it's working really well, though, right?
Oh, interdiction's perfect. It's working as intended. It's flawless.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the one great thing about interdiction is that it's a completely new feature, and it's sort of it's a layer on top of the game that can be patched outside of the game. As people will hopefully have noticed that after 3.0, there were various issues of like asteroids turning up outside Olisar and interdictions going mad. Those things, the people working on interdiction can quickly iterate on behind the scenes without having to push patches. We had whole new things turn up for 3.01 that those guys have diligently worked on behind the scenes to fix.
Yes, in 3.01, I'll give you a little backstory here, guys. There was a bug that came up after 3.01 that was quickly fixed through hot fixes behind the scenes, but where if I was on my server and I hit quantum and it rolled the dice and said, okay, you're going to get interdicted, it wasn't spawning the interdiction on my server, it was spawning the interdiction on John Crewe's server, and it was spawning the interdiction on Andy's server, and it was spawning the interdiction on other servers. So when 3.01 went out and interdictions went crazy, that's one of the things that was happening. It was the earliest version of server meshing. If you don't, that's not the earliest version of server meshing, but it was spawning missions on other servers, and so that was quickly and promptly hot fixed by the team there in Austin. Yeah.
There was another fun one as well where they were becoming self-aware, and the ones that were being spawned through interdiction were then trying to interdict themselves.
Yes.
So it just got out of control.
That sounds horrible. I don't like that.
Yeah, so like any other new system, it will take iteration and iteration and iteration. All right, we are almost out of time. Congratulations, folks. Here's another question from the thread here that folks were voting on. This was interesting to me. Weapons have different rates of fire and velocity, right? Would you consider someday allowing us to zero all the weapons to the lowest velocity that we're using? When people mix different weapon types on the ships, so that they didn't have to have multiple lag pips. So there's a way like if I've got this one that fires at a rate of 7 and this one that fires at a rate of 6 and this one that fires at a rate of 4, can I just make them all fire at a rate of 4? So nobody's firing faster than they would be able to. Can I slow them down so I could just have one pip instead of multiple pips?
I think that would solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
people's issues with pip divergence, and it's something that again has been talked about internally. Because I know through speaking with Calix, he's had a mind to fix this kind of thing for ages. Whether it happens,
it's one of those really in our heads. It's something we should be able to simply try. It's just trying to steal that precious engineering time away to give us a day or two of ability to set that up and test it. And because we think of lots of things, everyone thinks of lots of things during the day and go, that'd be great, that's going to solve everything. And quite often they don't until you actually prove it. And
you've got to start working with it. See all the problems. You've got to work through all of the obvious issues that will come up before you can even start getting these things in game.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so much the rate of fire, it'd be more more like dynamic convergence and velocity calculations.
Yeah. I mean, we want to just to try and we know about different weapon projectiles firing at different speeds, the problems that has by creating the pip divergence. We've already brought them in to be similar speeds. Yeah, you can bring them in further.
Yeah, and another thing we're considering for future patch is changing some of the default loadouts for ships. I was talking with Chris about it, and a lot of the default loadouts for ships haven't changed over the years. And when they were originally announced, there was a very limited set of weapons. So they all sort of have very similar loadouts, or they would have a wild mix just to make them different. And now we've got a lot more weapons in the game that it's something we can consider looking into and just going, does this ship actually benefit from having this weapon on a fixed or a gimbaled mount, when perhaps actually it would be much easier and simpler for that ship to be in a different loadout. I'm not talking wild changes like size 5 hardpoints on the wings of Hornets and M50s, but more changing this repeater for a different one that behaves a bit better.
I'd also like to look at the weapons used across the ships at the moment. It tends to be similar stuff on the loadouts, right? So we could, if there's a majority of the loadout configurations are, say, these 2 weapons, we could look at making those 2 weapons behave better together.
Yeah,
and that might make a huge difference to a large number of ships just by bringing them in a bit.
Yeah, and another thing we definitely want to look at is the default weapon group assignments, because there's certainly some ships out there that they just have the wrong weapon groups by default. Like they've got fixed and gimbaled weapons together in the same weapon group, and then they'll have the other weapon group with a different set, when really they should be all fixed or all gimbaled, or all ones that are similar together in one group, so they have that nicely converged set.
And when they vary so much, players like to lock them in anyway.
Yeah,
you gimbal lock them so that they don't have that problem, and that's something only advanced players really know about doing. So we've got that issue of new players, beginner players having these divergent pips, they're having trouble hitting things.
Yeah,
it's an issue that we still need to solve, but I guess we've got a few ideas about it.
Last question before we let you go, guys. Movies like Empire Strikes Back, have in the asteroid field, Chewbacca's flying through, being chased down by Star Destroyers, Han is running in the back to fix things. The time to kill is pretty high on a ship like that. In Star Trek, Geordi running through, there's a coolant link, and closing down things, and while the Enterprise is being assaulted by Klingons. What can you tell us about that kind of time to kill? Because obviously right now ships are dispatched much more quickly than we see in the media and the sci-fi that we're used to consuming. What can you tell us about that?
We touched on that before. The early answer about we're balanced around the current gameplay and how we're going to move towards that component. So yes, it is going to be like that. You will have on the ships that have interior space, you will be knocking out those components, and someone will have to go repair, replace, reroute power to get the ship back up to function. And it's something we can't nicely do at the moment because we have that fixed health pool, and you're alive or you're dead. There's no
complaints about big ships. Sometimes they can just die really quickly. Is because of the current system we have, and we've had to work with it and try to balance around that. And sometimes it works really well for those small ships, and then for the large ship, and some, like, I remember the Aurora having all that superfluous health for the longest time. I remember the Aurora was like just soak up damage like a sponge, and that was because of the current system.
I think occasionally I see a pirate Aurora that still has that health pool. I haven't seen the internal numbers, but every once in a while I see a pirate Aurora that I'm like, what are you actually on? It's like an Aurora PCP.
Yeah,
that's by design.
It's sort of going forwards, mid to long term. It's going to be talking less about time to kill, more time to disable, to give you that game. Because if you're blowing ships up, there's no way to board them, do anything interesting like that with it. So,
how are all these shipwrecks out there? Every time you get into a fight, they just blow up.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we've designed missions and stuff based around shipwrecks. That's the intention. That there'll be a long, protracted, multi-crew engagement.
Yeah.
You need to be able to get out with one chair, run to another, change the system, defend yourself.
Yeah, more great things that just fall out of that is they start generating missions themselves. So rather than it being design placed wrecks, people can start calling for help that they're disabled, need repair, refuel, rearm. They need people to come help them do stuff, need to help them transfer their cargo. And it's the game just sort of
isn't it? It has to
builds upon itself.
Yeah, awesome. You have to have that longer engagement.
Time to disable. I
TTD.
think that's the buzzword you just created right there. All right, John Crewe, Andy Nicholson, thank you so much for taking your time to be here on the show today. I know some folks in the chat were like, why is the show so early? It's because that's the way we have people from Europe on the show. It's the other alternative is to ask these guys to stay until like 9 o'clock at night on a Friday night after a long work week. And if the difference is I come in early or they stay late, we're gonna have these shows early, guys. So thank you so much for showing up. Let's try to make it not another 10 months before we have you back on.
Try not to.
Thank you very much for having us.
John Crewe's like, it could be another 10 months.
Yeah.
You called me for
Maybe
calling you
12.
dead last week. It's right. All right, thanks, guys. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our wrap-up, everybody. Stay tuned. Well, that about wraps up this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Some housekeeping before we let you go. This Monday is an all-new Calling All Devs where we discuss such hot topics voted on by you as org tools on the website, the future of mag boots, there is a future, and the current state of ship-to-ship docking development, and more. And after that, I'm going to see you again this Thursday when ShipShape returns to ATV with an updated look at the development of the Anvil Terrapin and something brand new that you've never seen before. I've been waiting to reveal this one to you guys for a long time now. So for Reverse the Verse, I'm content manager for global video production, Jared Huckabee. That's Andy, that's John. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.